Welcome everyone, episode 34 of the Tomato Timer, and today I'm joined by, I'm safe to say, a maths prodigy. Ivan Zelich published a paper on geometry when he was still at high school. He then was recognized as a Forbes 30 under 30. He has given 2 TED Talks, one in Paris, one in Sydney. Has just graduated from Cambridge University studying pure mathematics. He's back in Australia now, I think, doing some PhD future work. And finally, like the most amazing thing, he's the host of ZNotes Live. He helps run some awesome GCSE lessons for us as well. So Ivan, so good to have you. I don't think it's a new place for you, but like it's good to have you as a guest on our podcast.
Yes, it's great to be here. It's great to have a little chat.
Absolutely. Mathematics. I have to say this is going to be fun because we've had every type of graduate and expert on up till now, and I finally found like my a fellow mathematician to talk about. So I think I want to start off with your biggest achievement. Well, not your biggest. I'm sure there are going to be much bigger ones along the way, but publishing a paper at, how old were you? 15, 16, 17?
Yeah, I think I just turned 16. Yeah.
Incredible. How does that even happen? Like, considering what I remember from high school math, where you're just literally regurgitating exercises upon exercises of integration and differentiation, how do you even get to a point where you're thinking about mathematics at such a high level?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So you're right. High school, in some sense, you kind of do like a lot of repetition. They tell you how to do things and you do it, and then you have some exams, and those exams apparently dictate how much you know. Where in reality, when reflecting back, I'm sure a lot of people realize that doing well in those exams don't even mean that you understood what the maths behind it was anyway. Yeah. But nevertheless, I think in grade 9, I think it was, I started getting really interested in Olympiad math. So I went and competed, and I went to one of the schools where you get trained to go to the IMO, International Maths Olympiad. And when I did the exams there, so I actually didn't like geometry then. It was whenever I get a geometry problem, I get a bit scared. It was because you'd see lots, like in geometry, you have to come up with really clever ideas, and I didn't really understand how you come to those ideas. That was kind of the issue. Yeah. And in geometry, I wasn't good at drawing, so if I were to draw the diagram, there was no chance that it would be accurate. Yeah. And then I wouldn't see those key points. So that I was a bit scared whenever they would come up. And then when I got the exam and I did the geometry part of the exam, so we had 4 exams: number 3 geometry, algebra, and combinatorics. I think geometry was my worst one. So I tried to get better at it, and so I spent all of the end of year 9 just working at it, and eventually I just realized I really liked it. I liked projective geometry quite a lot. And then, I don't know, it was just a combination of solving so many problems that eventually I just realized I got to a point where I knew what problems people couldn't solve. I mean, it took about 2 years of just solving constant problems. Then again, being interested in doing it every day, not really 24/7, but it was pretty close. I was thinking about geometry quite often. And I think in year 11, I met my collaborator online. We are working on the same problem that nobody had a solution for. So we wanted to find a solution. And then we solved it after, I think, quite a few months of battle. And then we generalized it to a theorem. So it was like this problem, because we saw that problem and another problem. We were like, these seem linked. And so they were linked if you had an idea of what the overarching theorem would be. And then it was just from there. Like in reality, there was for me, it wasn't a idea of I want to solve a paper. It was more like a consequence of just working really hard because I loved it.
Yeah. So I think we got a question just now. It's like, what was the thing that made you go Eureka? And it seems like there definitely was this moment at the end where you actually solved it, but it sounds like it was a whole bunch of persistence and just sticking around and like working through a whole bunch of problems. I think with math, there's definitely this idea that you really, without putting the effort in, without actually like solving hundreds of problems, it just doesn't like open that concept, that idea.
Definitely. The Eureka moment, I think it was before I entered my last year. It was in December it was near Christmas,
Hmm.
and I was like, it was after 6 months we didn't know what to do. We tried many options, and so I was like, okay, um, I know we're generalizing something pretty big now,
Yeah.
but I do wonder if there's a way we can relate to another problem in two different ways. So to kind of relate to two different problems and then show that they're actually equivalent. So almost like a triangle. So make it
Yeah.
easy in one direction, make it easy in the other direction, and then prove that. And so basically what I
And
ended
only.
up doing, looking at the case that was known and made it so general that it was applicable in our case as well. So I generalized everything from it. And so the Eureka moment was when I figured out that it could be done.
Okay.
Like there was
Amazing.
possible that these things worked. Yeah. So I checked like so many results by different authors, and I realized, oh, that this is actually probably true. And then Zooming and I had to solve it. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it then just fell out from there. It was like 5 days of, yeah. Well, compared to
Amazing.
6 months, 5 days is not
Yeah,
much.
nothing at all.
Yeah.
So I want to just this is incredible, but this is very, very specific. There are very few people in the world, forget about mathematicians, but just 16-year-olds who end up publishing a paper in a proper academic journal. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges of maths at high school. I kind of told you about it, right? That so I in a definitely nowhere near your capabilities, but I love my math. I decided I want to study math at uni, and even then I didn't have the proper support. Even my math teachers weren't kind of encouraging me to continue to study it into uni. Even something like further math, which is like starting to become very, very popular in the UK, was really difficult, especially internationally, to get to. What would you say now that you've gone through like 4 years of math? What do you think high school math is? Because I have an answer for that, but I want to hear from you first.
Okay, yeah, sure. So just as you were saying that, it was interesting. So I've never really said this to many people, but back when I was in I think it was year 3 or year 4. So I don't know how old you are then, but whatever age you are,
7 or
I
8.
asked my teacher because I had searched up and I saw this Pythagoras' theorem, and I wanted to like know more about it. So I asked my teacher about it, and the response from that was not to tell me or to teach me or to show me where I can learn it. It was simply that we're not going to learn it now, and kind of don't be a smart ass. So in some sense, when it comes to maths and people that want to learn more in general, school can be not that encouraging. And I haven't really said this much. Like, I don't think my parents even know about it. So but it is an issue. Like, if you want to learn more, sometimes you're not given the opportunity, and so then you have to kind of find everything else on your own. But that aside, that's probably just my experience. Maybe I was a bit unlucky. But when it comes to maths, I think there is a few problems in high school and school in general.
Yeah.
I think the first thing is that it's learnt as a thing, like regurgitate these different facts,
Yeah.
and then just apply them. Now, I think in general, people fear what they don't understand, right? Just as a general fact, or what they can't understand. If we're not teaching students that all these different formulas actually mean something, and you can actually show that they're true in certain ways, and kind of explain to them, like, so that they understand it properly, then that's one reason why people end up saying, yeah, I'm just not a mathematician, because some people probably like to understand things from the nuts and bolts. And so I have this feeling that this is why mathematics can be so feared, because people come out and say, oh, I have this theorem or this formula, and they look pretty complex, but someone thought of it, and how the person thought of it is important to know, what led to him discovering it. And sometimes it's just a genius that thinks of these things, it comes out to them in their mind. But most of the time it's mathematicians who are people, they're very clever people, but they're just people who have a very clear process of how they got to the solution. And this is what we should be fostering, I think.
And so I think that that's one side of things. There's people like you who are struggling. We're almost stifled by their passion and wanting to know more, especially at places like, I don't know what the correct term is, but lower school, or when you're kind of in prep school or something like that.
Yeah.
What about what about the flipping that coin around a little bit? Thinking about people who are kind of immediately told that maths is not your subject.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's incredible because I'm sure you've gone out, like you've been out with friends and you're like, what do you study? I study math. And then you can see, the kind of the reaction is like shock, horror, despair. Why would you be forcing yourself and going through this pain? And like that reaction is never seen for any other degree. It's only for math. You tell them I'm an engineer. Okay, that's a little bit. I'm studying medicine. That's fine. I'm studying anthropology or psychology. Everything is okay. It's just with math that there's just like this general consensus that people just don't like it and don't want to like it either.
yeah.
And it like grinds my teeth a little bit because we never address the problem. As you said many times, we just accept that we're not math people rather than actually see why aren't we math people. And are we even allowed to say that? Are we allowed to go out and say that, hey, I can't write an essay or I can't type a proper message, or you can't go out and do that. And math is such a fundamental part of your day-to-day life. How can you just go about and say, no, that's not my thing, numbers aren't my thing? What would you say to that?
I think, you're right. What does it mean what does it mean that I can't do maths? So what does it mean that I can do maths? It's actually a strange question because, as you're saying, the same thing, like you can write an essay and things like that. We can't just say that you can't and just move on with your life, right? And I think when it comes to maths, there's this added, so as I always say, maths is very creative. And that's because, like, when you do end up getting to a stage where you know what the theories are, then you can be very creative. You can be like, well, what if I can connect these two together and make a new thing, or be inspired from one area to the other and things like that. But almost to get to that stage, you really need to have that passion to be able to pound through theories, books, and all this different literature, as well as do the problems, because otherwise you're not learning when you're doing the problems, because maths you have to kind of know, be able to apply what you know as well to difficult situations. And so there's all these different layers that if you don't really love it, then maybe that's what drives people to say, well, maths isn't for me, right? Because you have to really reach a certain stage where it's almost like you have to reach the mountain in order to see everything else, and then you can go from there. So maths only really gets to the creative part when you know enough, or you're really good at solving new problems.
Yeah.
Because there are problems out there that nobody knows how to solve, and so there's two ways about it. Either there is something that they all missed, which is usually unlikely, or you need to create something new. But to get to that stage, you really have to learn hundreds of years of mathematics. And I think that maybe that's the issue. I'm not sure.
Maybe. I always, the other thing that I kind of, when I talk about why people can't be math, why people fear it so much, I say that in many cases we are teaching it wrongly at school. And you mentioned this right off the bat. You said, we're giving them these formulas, we're giving them a black box, and we're saying that, hey, this is what you need to do. If you don't do it exactly like this, you're going to screw it up. If you even think about why this is happening, don't bother. I'm not going to answer this. All you need to do is take this problem, shove it into this procedure, and get an answer out of it. Yes, there's so many people out there who don't like that approach, right? We want to know why are we doing this? Why are we using this certain formula in this way? Why was this theorem? How's it created? So we almost like truncate the discovery. So something like differentiation and integration, and that was being thought about 100 years ago, and they were thinking about those, was it Gauss or Newton or whatever, they were thinking about like splitting them into little bars and taking the limits. I only got to understand, even at first year uni, I was like, oh, what does that even mean? And then it was like started kind of getting into my abstract conceptual knowledge, and that was when I started appreciating what I was doing in high school more, because now I realized that this what are we doing, like the product formula and integration or something like that. That's why it makes sense, because this goes back to this, goes back to this, goes back to this. And when you start to learn about the ingredients with which the theorem was put together, you appreciate it much more. I want to segue just a little bit further along into uni math. and the jump between high school to UD Math. How did you feel about it? You were obviously going into Olympiads. Was it a big difference? Did you think that things changed when you got there?
Yeah, for me it wasn't too difficult, but I can understand it being difficult definitely from high school for a lot of people, because you jump from a place where you're not doing any proofs, and then you go really to a place where everything is rigorous, and you have to learn mathematics like, properly. So yeah, but I just wanted to just briefly add on to your point. So when I said about the creative mathematics, in some sense, you're completely right, because if people were showed what the creative thing is, maybe they'd appreciate it more, like the creative side of it, what people had to do in order to think about these theories. So when you say mathematics is not for me, I took it more as being a mathematician is not for me. But when you say mathematics in particular, then showing them the creative side, I think we'll definitely appreciate. It's very similar to how one appreciates Shakespeare, I think, and chess and all these different things that require you to think of something new, or to solve something or solve a problem. The only difference is that sometimes in maths you can feel like there is no wrong, there is an answer, sorry, but in the humanities, on the other hand, usually it's open-ended. One person thinks one way, one person thinks the other way, and there are pros and cons that, depending on your beliefs, you go either way, but it's not usually the same in maths unless you get really far in. But anyway, delving back to the uni maths, I found it pretty straightforward, but I think that was only because I was also reading uni literature back in high school, when I could. So yeah, but how did you find it? Did you find it as a jump?
Pretty big jump. I have to say, first year math was not the greatest for me. I was struggling big time, and considering you come from school, I felt pretty confident about what I was doing. I was one of the only people who was doing further math in the whole country. And so when you come from that position to then being thrown in the deep end and be like, oh, I don't even get what the hell's happening in like this 2-hour lecture, it feels quite intimidating, and like makes you feel pretty small. I felt quite challenged by it. And I think the biggest thing was I'd never been exposed to this rigor. I'd never been exposed to the fact that you can have different concepts and theories built from scratch. And it was such a big change. So I guess to kind of like elaborate for some of our younger audience, we go into math saying that that's just one thing, but what we're doing at high school is mostly mathematical methods, I guess. We're just learning how to solve stuff. As soon as you get into kind of uni, you realize there are there's pure mathematics and applied mathematics. A lot of what we do at school is applied mathematics, and not even applied, just application of the mathematical methods. But pure mathematics is then split into algebra and analysis, and then kind of applied mathematics has a whole bunch of fields that open up. But yeah, so even realizing that there was this whole other way of thinking about what math is like was awesome, but also really intimidating, because it was not a language I was speaking at the time. Yeah. How would you describe the fields? How would you break it down, the way the pure and the applied?
You mean in pure, or just maths in general?
Maths,
like breaking up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. So what is pure? Pure is, I guess, maths that doesn't care about applications. Sometimes they find applications, and that's the interesting part. Like, you have algebraic topology in. For a while it would have been pure, and then now people are applying it to model like large networks and data and things, and especially like the brain, for example. They're like trying to use imaging and then use algebraic topology to figure out how the brain's wired, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's interesting when sometimes pure maths can actually become applied as well, just depending on doing it. But yeah, there's pure and applied, and in the different kind of math sectors, statistics seems to be both pure and applied, because you can get very, very theoretical statistics, or you can get statistics that's generally made for applying. So it's pretty neat. And then there's so I work in geometry at the intersection of geometry and number theory. But what's interesting in maths is that now it's getting so complicated. You can't really say someone is working just one field anymore. It's someone has to know a bit about everything, and so
Yeah.
to be able to work in these very complicated fields. So it's mathematics almost is like kind of as we're learning more about it, it seems like they're more related than we thought.
Yeah,
So
it's almost like the kind of the dichotomy of pure and applied is broken down, because you realize that there's so many applications for pure, and likewise
yeah,
there's so much to learn from applied math to help us out in pure.
yeah,
And
exactly.
they're interlinked. You know, in my department, I realized that there was this idea that, you know, applied mathematicians aren't really mathematicians; they're just like physicists with a math degree.
Yeah.
So there's that. I get that the people really still think that pure is the only way to go, but it's super cool. I guess without like trying to like bore our our audience about our interests, it's just like fair to say that what we learn at high school is just a tiny fragment of what mathematics really is. Um, and I think I was just thinking back when I first met you, and it was at that college in Cambridge. I don't even know where I'd gone. I was it was the night before my marathon, and I'd gone out with my friend. I was staying in Cambridge that night, and I can't remember where we were, whose party it was, or what whose birthday it was, and I just met you.
Yeah. I think it was Andres' party.
Yeah,
I feel like it. I know it was his party. I just don't know whose birthday it was.
Yeah, it was someone like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what struck me was like just having that discussion with you.
That was really nice.
As soon as we started talking about like, I guess like the what you're working on is incredibly, you know, abstract, and it's really cool. 'Cause I love algebraic topology, but I think what made me really kind of start to gel and understand you a little bit more, and then finally inviting you over to run some lessons for us as well, is the fact that you appreciated that, you know, we as a society have really given a bad name to mathematics. We think of it in a very negative way, and it's really not the subject's fault, more like the system's fault, and how we are trying to force feed it or explain it to the youngest of our generations.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. And yeah, I remember in our conversation as well, like we spoke a lot about how we can remedy that, and I think this is what we're going to try to do with our live sessions, is to be able to extend people who might want to learn more. And so yeah, that's where we found quite a bit of common ground, I think, trying to really help our subject be more universally accepted.
Appreciate it. I feel like we're starting a support group or like a you know, save mathematics kind of concept. I think there's so much out there as well. There's definitely like more appreciation as soon as like data science is coming about and more degrees are realizing the importance of mathematics. So let's talk a little bit about what does the future look like. Let's say look at me or look at you. You know, we've both got a master's in this completely abstract subject. My parents, my relatives, no one knew what the hell I was going to do with this degree. How did you respond to your parents or your family members who were maybe asking the similar questions?
Yes, so I mean, it's always the question, you know, are you going to end up being a maths professor, or are you going to do something with it, like something else outside of maths? And the way I see it is, I really love mathematics, so that's the reason I'm doing it. But when it comes to what's the use of mathematics, it's everywhere, but it's not that maths is everywhere. It's more the idea of thinking like very critically is very useful. And in mathematics, you have to like, you know, there's so many books out there, and you know, I have to read this thing in French, for example, a French book, and I'll have to figure out the quickest way. I need to read this text in order to absorb all the information, even do problems while I'm with it, which is something you don't have to do if you're just reading a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do that in the quickest way possible to understand what it's all about. You know, and that can be applied anywhere. And I think that's why lots of companies would like scientists and maybe mathematicians, because particular mathematics, you really have to be able to read a large volume of literature and understand it on a deep and abstract level. So when you apply that to other areas of life, like in other disciplines, it's actually quite simple. It's easier if you had that way of thinking critically to do that, I think. And so when I tell my my girlfriend and my family, etc., is that I think maybe I'll be a mathematician. I'm not sure. For now, I'm definitely dead set on getting a PhD because I want to pursue my area of mathematics that I love. But there are many issues in the world, and it'll be interesting to see if I have any good ideas in other areas to apply.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I say. I think the tool of being able to really delve into what is the problem. That's what you have to do in mathematics, like go through all these little things and to nail what is that key problem that I need to solve, and then figure out solutions to that is really important.
I think I have the exact same response and philosophy to you. I've always said that, like you, I do love mathematics. But at the end of the day, what really like kind of what I've got out of my degree is this. It's almost like I have this like toolkit now, thinking and really being able to absorb information, to be able to abstractify and apply both, because those are the things that are crucial, right? You need to look at a problem, whether it is mathematical or it's just literally a global issue, and you're looking at it. You look at you start to break it down into its most smallest units. These concepts are applicable in every field, whether it's computer science, whether it's, I would even say it's applicable in very, very non-mathematical subjects. So the other degree that I wanted to do, if I didn't study math, was going to be something like classics. So like you can just appreciate the disconnect of the two things that I really love. But what I'm trying to get to, like language, it's whether it's music, whether it's art, there's such a foundational for the real, like the highest people in those fields and degrees. They have those critical thinking skills. People who are managing and leading organizations, companies, not-for-profits, they have those sets of critical skills. So although it doesn't, like, you can't exactly say what you're going to do with it, there are lots of options out there. I know that I'm sure you noticed that, there are, the big four and big consulting companies are waiting outside the door when math students come out to give them jobs. So there's always that if that's what you're going to pursue. But
exactly,
yeah. It's really like you, with a degree in something so pure, you end up becoming like, you end up having that set of skills which really can take you anywhere in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I want to wrap this all up with kind of like a piece of advice or something that you think, after everything that you've done, what would you be like either telling yourself back at 15, 16, or, you'd like to share with our audience, specifically about your experiences, about what you think they should be looking at considering?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the most important thing that I would say is to first really believe in yourself, but I'm taking it more in the context of because it's a deep question, and there's lots of things I like to say to myself earlier, but I wouldn't change any course of what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I really made some right decisions, but also some bad ones as well. But I learned. But the key is to learn from them, of course. So that's one key point of advice: learn from your mistakes and don't be afraid to make them. But also, if you stay true to who you are and try to understand yourself. So in some sense, you see a lot of people achieving lots of things, and they do it and they just continue at it. But it's also important to understand what you feel like you love and what you feel like you're good at, and just stay true to that. And so that's difficult because in case you want to go into different subjects or areas and things, and maybe you're encouraged to go on a degree that you don't want. But if you stay true to that you don't want to do, but if you stay true to what you believe you're strong at and passionate about, then do that and see the opportunities arise as they come and make use of them. Yeah.
Amazing. Incredible. Thank you so much, Ivan. That was super insightful. And it was good to take you out from behind a presentation and actually hear your deep thoughts on this subject.
Yeah, it's a deep question, and so if anyone wants and to talk about anything, just shoot us a message in the ZNotes community. We're happy to have a chat.
Absolutely. All right, then let's call it a day. And thank you so much for joining us, and we'll probably see you again sometime next week running our lesson.
Wednesday and Friday, IGC Math.
Always. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining us live. As Ivan said, join us on Discord to find out about our next guest, to ask them questions, and just engage with an awesome bunch of people. But until then, bye-bye.